Welcome to the Research Culture Uncovered podcast, where in every episode we explore what is research culture and what should it be. You'll hear thoughts and opinions from a range of contributors to help you change research culture into what you want it to be.
Hello, it's Nick, back with another episode of Research Culture Uncovered, all about open research. Well, perhaps more accurately on this occasion, about open knowledge. And I have a couple of guests to introduce to you today, but before I do, I want to start with a quote. Not, I hasten to add, from either of my guests, but that they will certainly be familiar with, from Melissa Highton, Director of Learning, Teaching and Web Services at the University of Edinburgh. So, according to Melissa, universities really can't afford not to have a Wikimedian in residence these days. It still surprises me how few do. So today we'll be talking all about Wikimedia and universities with Dr. Lucy Hinnie and Dr. Richard Novell. Lucy is, in fact, our very own Wikimedian in residence here at the University of Leeds, or to give her official title, Wikimedia and Open Knowledge Advisor. Lucy has been with Wikimedia UK since 2021 and has worked in a variety of roles, including residencies, fellowships and training. Her background is in medieval Scottish literature. From 2019 to 2021, she lived and worked in Canada. Richard has worked at Wikimedia UK since 2012 and is responsible for helping organisations like the University of Leeds share their knowledge through the Wikimedia websites. He completed a PhD in archaeology at the University of Exeter and has first-hand experience of sharing research on Wikipedia. So hello both and welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
Hi, thanks very much for having us.
So I guess the first question, perhaps just to put to you, Lucy, is what exactly is a Wikimedian in residence?
A Wikimedian in residence is somebody who works within an organisation to advocate for and upskill members of staff and volunteers in using wiki platforms like Wikipedia, Wikimedia Commons and Wikidata. You'll commonly find them in galleries, libraries, archives and museums, but also in universities. So I'm currently in post at the University of Leeds. I've previously held a post at the British Library doing a similar kind of role. We also have a Wikimedian residence at the University of Edinburgh, Ewan MacAndrew, and they are in the process of hiring a resident down at LSE as well. So there's going to be a few of us in higher education in the coming year, which I think will be really exciting.
Yeah, well, we'll come back to that. And I think is part of your role, Richard, to support these Wikimedians, as we call them?
Yeah, absolutely. So at Wikimedia UK, we do a lot of partnership work with, say, the heritage sector and with higher education. And Wikimedians in residence are a really important element of that, because these are very often multi-year projects which help an organisation along its journey to sharing stuff openly. Universities are a little bit different because they already have a lot of guidance on open research, open access publications, they have university repositories, and so a lot of people have some familiarity with Creative Commons licensing and the reach you can achieve with that. But there's very often a gap around how you share that more broadly. Like the Wikimedia projects, including Wikipedia, are a great platform for sharing information. It's read by 22 billion times every month at the moment. So it's a fairly universal resource, but there often isn't a lot of support in getting the stuff out there. Mm-hmm. So that's often what we're doing. We're helping the residents be advocates within their organisation.
Thank you. So, yeah, we'll get into a bit more detail about exactly what that looks like in a university. But I suppose just to go back to that quote that I said from Melissa Highton, so just to give that a bit of context, that was actually from a survey that myself and Dr. Martin Poulter, who's another well-known Wikimedian, conducted a survey back in 2019, I think. So it's a good few years ago, just trying to establish to what extent universities and their libraries were engaging with Wikimedia, and that time it was relatively few. I mean, there have been pockets of this around. It's getting a bit more common, is it? I think Lucy just mentioned a couple there, and there's another one down at Exeter as well, isn't there? So there's still a long way to go, isn't there, I think, with engaging universities with this type of work.
Yeah, I think there's so much scope with it. You could have absolutely a Wikimedian resident at every university. You could realistically have a team of them. There's that much to do. I think what we'd really like to see is Wikimedia work being understood as core to a university's public work. It's sharing information in the most public way possible. All kinds of outreach with public-facing events, press releases, stuff in the news, conferences and so on are all really good. But when you're looking for longevity, it is hard to beat something like Wikipedia, which has become kind of the backbone of the internet. So there are more universities getting involved, especially with residencies, and it has different flavors depending on the university. Some have a very strong focus on the research, sharing the results of what the departments are doing, and some have a stronger focus on the educational skills, teaching the students the digital literacy aspect of editing Wikipedia. So there are just so many ways it could be taken.
And as I say, as we go, we'll surely talk in a lot more detail about our residency and the work that Lucy's doing here. But I suppose before we do that, just to give us a bit of an insight into your background, Lucy, come to you first. Your academic background and sort of what brought you to Wiki.
Sure thing. So I did my PhD in the 2010s at the University of Edinburgh, which was kind of quite a transitional time, I think, for those of us doing PhDs, because the job market was tightening up and the expectations of what a traditional PhD would lead to were changing quite rapidly. So in the mid 2010s, I sort of pivoted my interests in medieval Scottish literature into more of a digital humanities space. And that led to my postdoctoral fellowship in Canada at the University of Saskatchewan in Saskatoon, where I spent two really happy years. One really happy year, one pandemic year. So the pandemic year was slightly less happy because it was a little bit stressful. But what I was working on there was text encoding and digital editions, and I became more and more interested in two things. One was how to engage students with digital humanities work, and the other was the idea of knowledge activism and social justice through digital forms. So in the pandemic year, I attended a series of seminars at the University of Alberta, did digitally, with Erin O'Neill, who was their Wikimedian in residence at that point. And Erin's seminar series was all about Wiki as a tool for social justice, for indigenizing Wikipedia, for opening up pockets of political and really seismic thinking for both staff and students about how to engage with knowledge in a very real and tangible way. So I decided I would run a Wikithon with my students on my honours level class, which is how I first kind of encountered Wikimedia UK, who helped me with that. It was a bit of a disaster. It was a good Wikithon, but looking at it now, I'm like, oh my goodness, I did not know what I was doing at all. But we had a good time. We did it all online between Canada and Scotland. And from there, I applied for the Wikimedian residence role at the British Library, where I was from 2021 to 2023. And because that was part-time, I was able to apply for a job on one of Wikimedia UK's kind of flagship projects, which was the Connected Heritage NLHF funded project, which Richard managed. And I was working with grassroots organisations across the UK, digitally upskilling their staff and volunteers. And from that point on, it's just been all Wiki, all the time, every day. That's what I do now.
And you work, as I said at the beginning, you both work for Wikimedia UK. Perhaps give us your background, Richard, if you don't mind, and tell us a little bit about Wikimedia UK as well, and how that relates to the broader Wikimedia movement around the world.
Yeah, so I got involved with the Wikimedia movement back in 2006 as a volunteer editor. Basically, everyone who edits Wikipedia, to generalize, is doing it on a voluntary basis. And that's how I got started. So research and Wikipedia editing have been intertwined from the start for me. I found that Wikipedia was a really good place for leaving notes for myself, essentially, and helping me absorb information. So I was editing Wikipedia just before I'd even started university. So there's kind of this development in my thinking and how stuff is put together. My own research is about medieval archaeology, specifically the destruction of castles in the Middle Ages. And what I've really enjoyed about that is it's bringing together information for the first time very often, looking at this on a national scale. And it felt very wiki in the sense that you're pulling together vast amounts of information and creating something new from it. And my own experience of sharing research through Wikipedia is that for several years, I identified the Wikipedia page on the topic that I was writing about as a pretty woeful page with all sorts of inaccuracies. And I really wanted to get that sorted. So I had to wait until I had some peer-reviewed publications in the area that I could refer to and said what I needed to say to then start integrating it into Wikipedia. So that's kind of how it's come about for me. It was very much a case of Wikipedia and research go hand in hand, and think about how stuff can be shared and how it shapes the public understanding of a particular subject. So back in 2015, I made contact with Monica Green, a medieval historian specializing in the Middle Ages and women's history as well, and the history of health. She wrote a Wikipedia article about some misinformation that had been spread. And one of the key vectors for this spread was Wikipedia. It was a depiction of someone suffering from leprosy, and it was hosted by the British Library initially, and it was mislabeled as showing the Black Death. And this got picked up by Wikipedia, and from there, because of this huge audience, it just spread globally. So there were all sorts of places reusing this image as one of the most famous visual depictions of the Black Death, because it's free to use. So everywhere from personal blogs through to the BBC website and academic textbooks, everyone was picking this up. And so that was a really good way of understanding the role that Wikipedia has to play in sharing information. It's not just, is it on Wikipedia? It's the authority behind that information, the source that goes behind it. If it had just been on the British Library website, or if it hadn't originated from a reputable source, it wouldn't have had nearly the same spread. But it's that combination which allowed it to go very widely. The Wikimedia movement itself is really large. So it's got something like 100,000 people who edit Wikipedia every month. When you compare that to social media websites, it's not very many, but it's a very different kind of situation. These are people creating and sharing knowledge rather than a social media website. English is the largest project, started in 2001, and it kind of grew from there. It is an international movement. It does have a focus in content, typically North America and Northwest Europe, due to all sorts of factors, including ease of access to information and English being a kind of lingua franca of the internet. Organisations like Wikimedia UK are really important for local outreach, doing activities which connect with organisations which hold information that we want to share. And that's especially important as well because Wikipedia, the way it's been put together, the structures it has around access to information and reliable sourcing, means that topics which get the most attention in society tend to get the most attention on Wikipedia as well. Mm-hmm. As a result, it can be imbalanced in its content. And partnerships with universities or museums are really important for taking active steps to address those balances, to write voices back into Wikipedia that have been overlooked.
Yeah, and that's certainly an important part of the work that we've been doing. And Lucy already alluded to that as well. And I think your introductory was through the Indigenous work that you were exposed to in Canada, and we're certainly doing a lot of that at Leeds as well. I suppose it's just worth emphasising though as well, isn't it, that we're all from kind of a humanities background, I think, on this call, having this conversation. And perhaps I should say something about my sort of introduction to Wikimedia and Wikipedia as like yourself, Richard. I guess it's an organic process, isn't it? You sort of, it's ubiquitous, Wikipedia. You see it around all the time. You get lots of information from there. It might not always be reliable, and as you say, we've already discussed some of those biases. But because I was working in a big research-intensive university, lots of obviously research, humanities research, but also STEM, social sciences, and sort of increasing the impact and the public engagement with that research was part of my role as an open research advisor. And I thought, well, we're seeing all this research through our services within the library, which is openly licensed. You already referred to Creative Commons licensing early on. And there's a real potential there to get it onto Wikimedia Commons. So one of the things that we're hoping to do is upload openly licensed images from research papers, whatever that may be, to Wikimedia Commons, where they're immediately more visible. They're cited back to the primary research, and they've got then that authority, if you like, of the sort of academic record behind them as well. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do. And I think perhaps come to you, Lucy, because by your own admission, I think you're learning quite a lot around STEM. You're not like me, you don't have a STEM background, you've got a humanities background, and obviously a lot of the colleagues we are working with are scientists. So how's that experience been for you?
Amazing. Like, one of the things I love most about working with Wiki is you get to talk to people about the things that they care about and know the most about, which is so nice. I think when you're on a purely academic trajectory, you can often lose sight of like the bigger picture. Someone once told me that doing a PhD is learning more and more about less and less, and I think that can be true. You can get really tunnel visioned about it. So being able to look at and think about these areas where I never would have thought 10 years ago I would be at all involved in, so things like climate data, looking at different cloud patterns, looking at water politics and supplies across the globe, it's so refreshing and fascinating to do. And what unites all of us is the ability to share this knowledge on Wikipedia in a way that anyone can understand. And I think that's super, super important, especially in kind of this really digital age and moment that we're living in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's, that puts me in mind of a particular project. And obviously, hopefully talk about a few of the other projects that you and I are working on here at Leeds. But expert reviews is one thing that I'm hoping to really promote. That's been really interesting, hasn't it? So perhaps tell us.
It's been really cool. Yeah, so what Declan Finney had come up with, which I think has just been a really interesting way of looking at Wiki, is this idea that a lot of people have the knowledge and expertise, but not necessarily the time or inclination to pick up those Wiki skills. And we're very pragmatic at Wiki, like we're very realistic. Not everyone has the time to edit or the inclination to do so. And there can be barriers to it, like conflict of interest or overly citing yourself if it's something you've written about. So what Declan introduced was this idea that groups of experts, in this case a group of kind of postdocs and early career researchers, could look at a wiki page, not actively edit it, but rather write an overall review of it. Then that review could be posted to the talk page of the article for other editors to action should they choose to. And this, I think, has been a really thorough and useful way of improving particularly scientific content on Wiki, because a lot of it is about citation and making sure that information is accurate and up to date as possible. So that's a mode of working that I think developed from originally Tatiana Boleta's work at the University of Exeter, where she focuses quite strongly on climate. That's the focus of that residency. Tatiana and Declan had worked together in the past, and this idea kind of came to fruition. And it's definitely one that we're really excited about at Wiki UK and really looking forward to maybe implementing in other residencies and other Wiki projects that we're working on.
Yeah, and it's still early days here at Leeds, isn't it? And certainly, if any colleagues from Leeds are listening, it's certainly something we'd like to explore with with other colleagues in different disciplines and
Absolutely.
different contexts around the university,
Mhm.
because we need those people with the expertise, as you say. And obviously, we're in a university, we're in a privileged position where we've got access to those experts that can help us to actually improve the global commons, all that information on Wikipedia.
Absolutely.
And also, it's just related to that as well. You also alluded to it, because I think this, I don't know if you could comment on this, Richard. There's quite a lot of discussion that, I remember talking to Martin actually, that scientific articles, perhaps other types of articles as well, but scientific articles often aren't that easy to read. You know, they're not actually written in as an accessible way as they could, and that's a skill, I think, for researchers, a valuable skill in this day and age, to try and make that their expertise as clear as possible.
Readability is a really interesting challenge. That's something we've seen in various areas, like especially to do with climate change. They may be taking some quite complex topics and replicating some of the high level jargon stuff, which is a quick and easy way of communicating to people in your field who are in the know, who have the background. But on Wikipedia, very often you're talking to people who don't have that background. So it is another skill to write for that kind of audience, and one which I think is hugely beneficial to all researchers to engage with, because it helps think about the clarity of your writing and what ideas you might be taking for granted that needs to be explained, which is also really helpful, not just for talking to the public, but others of your peers as well, because jargon can be really useful as a quick way of shortcutting information, but at the same time, it is a way of shutting people out.
Yeah.
So it can be a good way of not just sharing information with the public, but with, say, early career researchers. From my own research, I do notice a difference in the way I read research papers now to how I did when I was an undergraduate student. I can look at a paper now, and if I don't understand something, I can work out if it's because I don't understand the topic or if it's been poorly explained. And I know that as an undergraduate student, I bumped my head against a few articles and just thought I must be reading it wrong.
Yeah.
Communication is a whole set of skills, and whatever you can do to practice them is worthwhile. Wikipedia is a great way to be doing that in a very productive way as well, because you have a tangible output that people will be able to benefit from.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything to add to that, Lucy?
Yeah, I think there's just also this thing of like when Richard and I were at uni, which was super recently, we were undergrads last year, I'm sure. There was a push against Wikipedia as like it's not reliable, don't use it. And I think one of the big shifts that we've had is this like, but people do use Wikipedia, so let's make it the best it can be. And I think that makes it really unique on the internet in terms of that accessibility and that accuracy. Is making it this source that rather than pushing against it and saying let's shut it down, we've opened it up, made it better, and made it as reliable as we can. And I think that's, I don't know, it's quite heartwarming. I think particularly in the current landscape of sort of internet spaces, I think it makes it pretty unique.
Yeah, and of course it's not just human readers, is it, that access and use Wikipedia. So I mean that ties in. I mean, sort of artificial intelligence and large language models, we suspect, well, we know, I mean, again, they're black boxes, aren't we, to some extent, and I know Declan and Tatiana have explored this a little bit as well, but, you know, the issue that actually, because it's such a big open corpus, that these types of tools do use Wikipedia, so it's actually even more important now to get them to accurate, and also to teach people about information literacy. Any sort of comments on that sort of side of things? I know it's a fast moving area, but
Lucy, do you want to go?
I'm trying to find the citation for a quote that I really like that I've been using in my training, which is this idea that Wiki has this really unique chance to be the counterpoint to AI slop by being as accurate as it can be and maintaining its vision and focus. And I see all the work that goes on behind the scenes, both at Wiki UK and on a larger scale, to keep that the case. But it's an ever-changing playing field, and it's quite a challenging time, I think, to be existing in this web space of sort of mis and disinformation and AI. But we do everything we can to at least feed it good food, I suppose, at least keep it as accurate as we can and make sure there are some sources that are citable. And I think Wiki's reliance on citation will stand it in good stead as we start to look more closely and scrutinise more deeply what is coming out of these large language models when we query them.
One small parallel that occurred to me is that when AI and LLMs really took off with the launch of ChatGPT 3, there were similar initial reactions to when Wikipedia became part of the mainstream. Warnings to not use it because it's unreliable. I think that a straightforward approach like that, it has clarity, but it's not realistic because of how LLMs have been crowbarred into everything. It's part of your email inbox, it's part of your phone, it's part of how you navigate the internet, whether you want to or not. I think it's really important to have those skills to be able to identify when it's being used, how it's being used, and understand if what it's producing is junk or not. And being able to spot it is really important because you don't seem to be always able to turn off the features, but you can often navigate past them. The point of divergence is that Wikipedia is so open. You mentioned before the black box that is AI. We don't really know what goes on in those algorithms. We can't interrogate what has gone into this. So that is a much more significant point of difference there. It's why I think that it's easier to trust Wikipedia because of that transparency compared to AI and LLMs. I think that Lucy's point about the possibility for Wikipedia to further enhance its position as a source of information is really important. Humans have always been central to Wikipedia. It has this expressed aim of being the sum of all human knowledge. And I think that in 2025, we can put human in bold, italics, and double underline it, because that is absolutely central to how the information is created. And that human oversight is going to be really important for ongoing work. Because now I hope that LLMs will develop to be more reliable, more trustworthy, more accurate. But as long as they remain closed, they are potentially going to be manipulated by the companies that develop them. And that can be to direct you to their shop, to believe a particular point of view, or undertake a particular action. Back in the 2010s, I was thinking about Wikipedia and whether it constitutes a kind of monopoly, but I don't think it does because of the model in which it's created. Because it is an open source project and it's collaborative, it's not a monopoly in the same way that many other online properties are. So you will have, say, Amazon, which is basically a monopoly on online shopping. The likes of Facebook, which are taking over all sorts of online communication. They now own WhatsApp. Google owns YouTube. They have the potential to use those platforms however they want. So Facebook ads can be used to drive people to particular political parties. News stories can be suppressed if organizations so choose. It's that potential manipulation that is most concerning about the monopoly situation. Whereas with Wikipedia, it's that shared ideals about sharing information, but also having a framework which centers independent, reliable sources as a key building block for those articles, which means that it's not really possible to have a monopoly on Wikipedia itself. It just wouldn't really work. That is my optimistic view, at least. Wikipedia, though it's one of the most visited websites in the world, does not have a monopoly on knowledge. There aren't many online encyclopedias out there, certainly not at the scale of Wikipedia. And those which are successful are much more specialized than Wikipedia. I think a healthy Wikipedia should lead to a healthy internet, signposting readers to more information, summarizing important stuff. Wikipedia should never be the endpoint in a search for information.
I think one truth that has remained is that Wikipedia is not itself a source, it's a source for sources. And that's how we should treat it, and we should make sure that those sources are as good as they can be. And on that note, I was a good Wikipedian and checked my own citation, and it was Ted McCormick, who's a historian on Blue Sky, who said that Wiki had the opportunity to provide a comprehensive counterpoint to AI slop at a time when it is badly needed. So thank you, Ted McCormick, for that quote, because I think it's really apt.
Okay, well, when we publish this, I'll add some show notes with various links in, etc. And I think this is a really interesting discourse at the moment. I just wanted to maybe, well, not even play devil's advocate really, but I mean, we've already alluded to some of the risks associated to Wikipedia potentially through AI and LLMs. I think there's some concern that people might start using those instead of Wikipedia, even though that is actually feeding Wikipedia. I think there is some evidence that some AI slop is actually finding its way onto Wikipedia. Is that the case? And also, just to, as I say, slight counterpoint to what you were saying, Richard. And it is a battleground for the culture wars, isn't it? I suppose increasingly we do live in strange times, information-wise, and there's an accusation, isn't there, that it's left-leaning and woke, and all these kinds of things. So we don't perhaps want to get too political around these things, but I think But this is why it's so interesting as a space for the generation of and the dissemination of knowledge. I don't know if either of you got any thoughts on those points.
Absolutely. So I take an optimist view, which is that Wikipedia has faced similar challenges in the past. I mean, not identical by any means, and come through the other side. So one thing that springs to mind is that back when Google started including snippets in its search results, there was concern that people would get the information they needed from that and not go through to Wikipedia itself. So you have the little kind of summary box on Google. It will give you a couple of sentences, very often sourced from Wikipedia. And there was a concern that might lead to fewer people visiting Wikipedia. The community itself of writers weren't too concerned, because the idea is that if people are getting the information from Wikipedia and benefiting from it, it doesn't perhaps matter too much where they find it. It's a bit more nuanced than that. And there's a serious issue that if you don't have people going to Wikipedia as readers, you will also likely see a drop-off in people contributing as editors. That would be very serious indeed. I think that there will be a core of Wikipedia editors who continue because of the value they see in such a project. But to make sure that is most useful, it does need people coming to the website. With LLMs and AIs, it's kind of a similar situation in that if people ask for a summary of something or key facts, they are likely to be getting that from AI these days. I think that the more skeptical people will still look for other sources of information, but there seems to be a whole variety of ways of using LLMs and AI, such as instructional stuff, which Wikipedia doesn't really do. So there are some very specific use cases which could be an issue for Wikipedia. So far, I haven't noticed the publicly available traffic statistics decline. And AI LLMs have been available for best part of 2 years now. That could change very quickly because of how search engines use AI. So Google had been using Gemini and it puts stuff at the top of their search results, that could have a very significant impact in people going through to Wikipedia. I think it's around 70 to 80% of Wikipedia's traffic is through search results. So that is really important for Wikipedia. If Wikipedia results end up ranked lower, that does mean fewer readers and ultimately fewer people contributing to Wikipedia and keeping it up to date. As an encyclopedia, it covers a whole lot of stuff. It does also cover news topics. It's not a newspaper, but it does sometimes effectively aggregate as a news source. So that could end up losing some people as a result. So it is a concern. I'm optimistic that it is a concern that the Wikimedia community can rise to, but it is hard to predict how it will go.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're sitting at a really interesting intersection where people, so Wikipedia is going to be 25 next year, so it's been old enough to drink in America for the last 4 years, and now it's
maybe
I don't
that's
know, old enough to rent a van or something. I'm not sure what you can do at 25. I think we're at this interesting point where people are being born into a world where they've never not known Wikipedia, and I think in that way some of the wonder has maybe gone from the younger audiences because they take it for granted that it's there. And I think there is still this opportunity to engage and enthuse people by saying, you know, you can be part of this, you can change it. And one of the things when we were in Katowice in Poland last year for Wikimania, one of the things that really struck me in a very positive way was how many of the wiki personalities who were being highlighted as Wikimedians of the year were younger, were in the kind of 18 to 25 age bracket. I think there was even a high schooler was getting commended for the amount of editing they'd done. And I like to think that there's going to be a resurgence of that interest and enthusiasm from this generation who maybe haven't quite realised just how spectacular Wiki is and how unique. Mm-hmm. And in terms of AI and culture wars, I think often about the quote from one of the Monty Python creators when Life of Brian came out, that everyone was so offended by it, they'd actually done something quite remarkable because they'd united all the major religious groups by creating something that managed to rankle everyone. Mm-hmm. And I would say that although there is a lot of right-wing ire at Wikipedia, to which I would say the truth is timeless, and if you have a problem with the truth, then that speaks to something greater that is wrong. There are still people on other sides of the political debate who find Wikipedia upsetting for different reasons as well, which makes me believe that somewhere along the way we're doing something right. We're balancing it. I don't know. Maybe that's what the truth is.
Yeah, no, and it is fascinating. I mean, just on the political point, we'll come back to the issue at hand, which is obviously your work here in the residency at Leeds and universities. But another potential risk that we could perhaps just mention, if not going into much detail, is the Online Safety Act proposed by the British government, which potentially classes Wikipedia as a site that will need to be age verified. I don't know if you could comment quickly on that. I know it's ongoing and there's no conclusions been made there yet, I don't think, has there?
So with the Online Safety Act, one of the things about Wikipedia is that it is quite an unusual website. It has a very large user base in terms of the number of readers, but it doesn't really function the same way that the likes of Facebook and other social media sites do, or other content services like YouTube. Part of it comes down to protecting people from potentially extreme content and the damage that may cause. With Wikipedia and its position explicitly as an educational resource, it's very different as well. So it's one of those things where we are kind of an outlier and working out where Wikimedia sits in this situation. I think that all parties would want to avoid a situation where Wikipedia ends up blocked in the UK. That would be harmful for not just Wikipedia, but its readers in the UK, and creates this potentially unusual vacuum. Wikipedia is consulted so often on an almost daily basis by just about everyone. It's used by everyone from school kids using it for homework through to people preparing briefings at work, and they need a primer on a particular topic. So it is a regular part of people's lives. I think that it's likely people do whatever can be done to avoid that kind of situation. So again, I am taking an optimistic outlook here. I think there is the broader issue that while Wikipedia is kind of an outlier here, there are other open knowledge projects like, say, Geograph, which will not be a tier 1 project, but is worth considering what the impact of the Online Safety Act would be for them. And I think that if you are potentially shutting down a source of information which is so widely used, you need to consider what the implications of that would be, because you are potentially creating an information vacuum. And what fills that vacuum will initially be slop, junk, and mis and disinformation. So I think that the people involved will be very cautious about what they do.
Yeah, no, thank you. And as I know, it is a complex situation, and just conscious of time, so perhaps we'll just return back to talk a little bit more about the residency and the work that you and I are doing, and you, Richard. Obviously, you're part of this work at Leeds as well.
Absolutely.
Perhaps tell us a little bit more about some of the I suppose I'm interested, Lucy. I can't say you're new any longer, can you? But you are only part-time. You're only with us 2 days a week, and you started in January. So, what were your early impressions of Leeds, and tell us a bit about some of the work that you've enjoyed doing in the relatively short time that you've been here.
I really like this question. So I'm obviously, as you can tell from my voice, I'm from Scotland. I'm not from around here. And when we moved back from Canada, we moved to York. So I haven't actually spent a huge amount of time in Leeds. When I worked at the British Library, I was involved in quite a few things with BL North. So I'd gotten to know the city a little bit through that. And one of the things I really love about Leeds is a real sense of like civic pride and engagement in everything that happens in the city and the people who are involved in it. For 8 years of my life, I lived in Glasgow, and I find that Glasgow and Leeds are quite similar in that way, in a really, for me, a very comforting way, and also a very exciting way as someone who wants to work in open knowledge and with local communities. So my first impression of the university has been really positive. The people that work here are incredibly open-minded, incredibly interesting. It's just been a real pleasure to kind of slot into some of the things that are already ongoing here at Leeds, particularly I would say the Knowledge Equity Network. That's been kind of second home in the work that we've been doing, but also to meet people from across the disciplines and across departments who are all looking to engage more widely with the question of what it means to share knowledge on Wikipedia, how we can encourage people to do that, and how we can make it part of the kind of flow of knowledge that occurs in higher education institutions. I think a highlight event for me two spring to mind. One is the Africa Week Wikithon that we ran back in June, which was very well attended, and just a very engaging event all around with staff, researchers, and we were lucky enough to curate a conversation with Tochi Precious, who's an outstanding Wikimedian in her own right, and came to speak to us about some of the work she'd been doing on African language wikis. And that leads into an event that we ran just in July, which was one of Nick's. It was a Shepherd classic. It was a quick and brilliant idea that grew arms and legs in the best way. We ran a translation editathon where we encouraged people to translate things out of English Wiki and into their own languages or languages they were familiar with. That was actually quite new territory for us. Although Wikimedia UK has done a lot of work with minoritized languages, and the University of Edinburgh has worked with like Translation Studies MSc, translation is still something that I personally was a little nervous about, because I think being English speakers, we get quite lazy about other languages. We have a huge monopoly of what we can access. So taking time to work with staff and students and researchers to put things into other languages was just really remarkable. And we're hoping to continue that workflow, maybe with some sort of touch base meetings in the coming months. So those were my two highlights, but there have been numerous other things that have been just amazing to be involved with as well. So it's been a really fruitful 8 to 9 months so far, and I'm looking forward to seeing where we go next.
Yeah, it was great, wasn't it, the translation event? And again, I'm tragically monolingual, I'm afraid. But it was, I keep meaning to count up the number of languages we had. I'm not quite sure if we could put a number on it, but it was plenty, wasn't it? We had African languages, we had some European languages. I can't remember. I'll have to sort of dig them out. But and obviously, the Wikipedia's in over 300 languages altogether. So there's
over 320.
And again, that's another benefit of being in a university, because we've got a wide pool of colleagues, all from all around the world, and it gives us a unique opportunity to sort of bring them together and to do some of this type of work. Just to touch, I think you referred earlier, Richard, to some of the things we do have to bear in mind as a university, because Wikipedia, and people may not be familiar actually with a lot of the rules and the sort of perhaps rules is the sort of framework around Wikipedia. So you alluded earlier to conflict of interest. So that's something, and again, Lucy, you've written something on our wiki page, which I'll link to, around conflict of interest. So perhaps you could just tell us a little bit about that, because there's absolutely no reason we can't edit Wikipedia as a university, but we do have to just be aware, don't we, of one or two guidelines.
It's a really interesting line to walk, because we want to get the benefits from expert knowledge and have that in Wikipedia. At the same time, we want to avoid the downsides of conflict of interest to do with being seen as promotional, for example. It's worth keeping in mind that most of Wikipedia's experience with conflict of interest stuff is around companies and trying to stealth advertise and do a bit of PR, that kind of thing. It has less experience of working with academic audiences, people who say are trying to share their research in appropriate ways, or even museums who are sharing stuff to do with their area of expertise. That is the minority of cases for Wikipedia. So most Wikipedia editors might be more geared towards dealing with PR and for-profit stuff that's going on. And it sometimes isn't all that subtle or all that ethical, unfortunately. There are guidelines for how to do it properly from the Chartered Institute for Public Relations. But then you'll see someone like North Face, who, as documented by the BBC, made some changes to Wikipedia articles to promote their products, get photographs in, say, Wikipedia pages about hiking, and that wasn't looked on terribly favourably. I mean, there were right ways and wrong ways of going about it. That was the wrong way. You need to be transparent about what you're doing, because that is a great strength of Wikipedia. Transparency allows the editing community to make informed decisions about what content should be included. So when it comes to being a researcher and sharing your own work, you've got to think about how that could appear, not just to Wikipedia editors, but the public. Is the information you're adding just about you and your work, or is it broader? It might be a small update, in which case a citation to your work is all that's needed. But if you're addressing a topic which is a bit broader and you're contributing towards that, then it's very helpful to cite other people's work as well.
Yeah.
It shows that you're not just in it to boost your own stuff, but you're thinking about what the public would benefit from. I think a really good principle is that if you are in doubt about what constitutes conflict of interest, mention it on Wikipedia's talk page, ask for the input of other editors, explain what it is you want to do, and they will give you some advice. They will say, oh, don't do that, but you can do this. Or they might say, that sounds fine, go ahead and add it.
Mm-hmm.
The important thing is having that dialogue with the community, because that gives them an opportunity to have a say on the content before it's added into the Wikipedia page. Because when you add information to Wikipedia, it is live immediately to everyone. The review process, such that it is, relies on the number of Wikipedia editors. It's people checking the new changes feed, checking their watch list, keeping an eye on things as it comes through. There isn't a formal process of someone needs to tick this button against this edit before someone can see it. So we're trying to get it right when it goes live. And especially when conflicts of interest involved, you need to declare the conflict, the interest, and have a dialogue with the community about it, because we do want expert involvement. That is so incredibly valuable.
Yeah, and that transparency, I think that's what I've certainly learned. And it's essentially what Declan did with the expert review as well, isn't it, Lucy? As you alluded to at the beginning. So it just, we did a review, but we didn't actually make any changes to the article until we posted on the talk page and had an opportunity for the community to contribute to that discussion before we went ahead and made the edits. Yeah.
And I think this is where a resident comes in really handy. Is one of the many places I hope that we come in handy is explaining and advocating for some of these wiki policies that, to an outsider who just wants to quickly share some information that's cool, which is a great thing to want to do, may immediately get frustrated with all this kind of red tape around it. But being able to have someone on side, on team, who is able to talk through that and explain it, I find that that's often a really good way of de-escalating conflict and also making sure that people understand why things are the way they are. There's nothing I hate more than being told no for no reason. So I like being able to give people that context, as Richard's just done there, of like why certain things are and aren't okay, and how that ultimately benefits Wiki, even if it's frustrating in the instant moment.
Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you very much. I mean, just a final question, one each for you before I let you go. I suppose, first of all, for you, Lucy, if colleagues are interested in getting involved with this work, any suggestions to them? I mean, obviously, get in touch with you. How would you encourage people? What would you say? What would be your pitch to our colleagues to get involved with this work?
I would say get in touch. We'll have a chat. We'll have a cup of tea. I know that tea is very important to the Leeds knowledge economy, so we can do that. But otherwise, I would say there's an excellent book of education case studies. I'll give Nick a link for the show notes, that was compiled by the University of Edinburgh. I think there's over 20 case studies in it that show you all the different ways that Wiki can be used, particularly in the classroom. Have a look, see if there's something you like, something you'd like to emulate, something we can advise on. Find wiki pages that interest you, see where the gaps are, come along to one of our trainings, make yourself known, give us a wave, and we'll make sure to take you along with us to whatever we do next. So yeah, don't be a stranger. As you probably gathered over the last hour, we really like talking about Wikipedia, so we're never offended when people pop out of the woodwork to ask us questions.
Thank you. And a sort of related question, I guess, for you, Richard, is if there were listeners from other universities or other institutions, other organisations, whether that's GLAM or in particular universities, again, how would you encourage them to get involved with Wikipedia? And I suppose you're the person to perhaps get in touch with about that.
Yeah. Most universities aren't lucky enough to have a Lucy Hinnie. And if you don't have a Wikimedian in residence and you're based in the UK, get in touch with Wikimedia UK. We have an email address called programs@wikimedia.org.uk, and that will go to myself and my colleagues. We have experience of working with universities and further education as well, and we can help you, whether it's delivering a one-off Wikipedia workshop through to developing plans for how to integrate Wikipedia editing across a module. So you can work out what digital skills you want the students to pick up, what activities would help with that, and what might help with the assessment and reflection as well. So we do have some good experience with that. And it's really fun to do as well.
It is,
because
yeah. That's my overriding message. It's fun. It's a great
Absolutely.
community event, and it's fun, isn't it, as well? And just to add to that quickly as well, Richard. I mean, you've got lots of volunteers, haven't you? Volunteers editor, of which I'm one. So as well as my own university, I'm happy to volunteer for other organisations and other projects as well. So thanks very much. Do get in touch with Lucy, Richard, or myself if you'd like to learn any more about this work and more generally about Wikimedia and Wikipedia. But thank you for your time, Richard and Lucy, and I'll let you get on.
Thank you very much for having me.
That was fun. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Research Culture Uncovered podcast. Please subscribe so you never miss out on our brand new episodes. And if you're enjoying the discussions, give us some love by dropping a 5-star rating and written review, as it helps other research culturists find us. And please share with a friend and show them how to subscribe. Thanks for listening, and here's to you and your research culture.